3 books to make you rich. 5 books that turned me into a $100 million CEO in my 20s. 9 books every aspiring millionaire must read. If you want to become rich and to build a profitable online business, then you've probably seen these type of videos recommended to you on YouTube. The truth is that before I started my own consulting business, I fell into the rabbit hole of mindlessly consuming content, especially YouTube videos about business and self-improvement. However, the sad truth is that in these videos about 3 books that made me a multi-millionaire, or 5 books that you must read if you want to become rich, what the creators of these videos don't tell you is that reading will not make you rich. And in this video, I've made it my mission to prove why it is the case. But I'm also going to share with you what is indeed going to make you wealthier than you could ever imagine. So if your goal in life is to get rich so that you can travel the world, provide for your family, your loved ones, or buy whatever it is that you want to buy without having to take the price tag into consideration, live an abundant lifestyle, then make yourself comfortable, grab a drink, because this video is about to forever change your life. Mark my words. You see, one big misconception that a lot of people seem to have in mind is that successful people, or people who go on to become super rich and make millions of dollars, are necessarily more talented or have a higher IQ than the average Joe. Most people typically believe that either you are born with a certain trait or a certain talent, a certain ability, so you're naturally good at it, or you're not. And there isn't much that you can do to change that. That's what most people believe. Well, let me tell you that this is a myth, and more than a myth, it is a lie. Everybody knows Ed Sheeran, right? I'm sure you know who he is, even if you don't listen to his music. Shape of You was all over the radio just a few years ago. Now, most people, they typically conceive that you can make improvements and get better at whatever it is that you do. And in just a second, you'll understand why I'm talking about Ed Sheeran. Believe me, it's gonna make sense. Like, for instance, most people, they know that if you start going to the gym or you start to go for a run a couple times a week, then you'll most likely improve your health and your cardiovascular system. However, when it comes to things like making millions of dollars or becoming a New York bestseller or even creating the new hit song of the summer, most people believe that these things are almost impossible to achieve unless you get lucky or unless you're just born for it. I've always personally loved listening to music. So naturally, when I was a younger teenager, I started to get interested in practicing my singing abilities and getting lessons. And the thing with practicing singing is that it's very difficult, more so than it is to practice an instrument like the guitar or the piano. Because if you make mistakes when you're playing the guitar or the piano, well, if you feel any guilt, you can always blame your poor performance on the instrument. But on the other hand, when you are singing, well, it's your voice that you are using, and therefore it's also your voice that you are exposing to people and to critics. And so if somebody criticizes your singing, it feels like a personal attack. It feels as if like they're criticizing you as a person, because your voice is your own and it's a very personal thing. And so when I was doing my research at the time, I noticed that most people around me and most people all over the world, because that's what I saw on the internet, they seemed to believe that singers were born, not made. Now, I personally didn't subscribe to this mainstream belief, and ever since I was a young kid, I always questioned everything. I just couldn't blindly believe what somebody told me just because they were an adult or an authority figure. No, you see, I had to draw my own conclusions, and in order to do that, I needed to witness things myself, to try things out for myself and see what works and what doesn't. So it turns out, singing, just like anything else in life, can be learned and improved. And if you don't believe me, well, I'm going to play a clip of Ed Sheeran from the Jonathan Ross show, proving that he used to sing terribly. Now you may be wondering, okay, that's very interesting and all, but what does any of this have to do with reading books and getting rich? Well, you see, I just told you that funny little story to show you what books are for. Books are not made to give you a specific end result per se. Just like a recipe is not made to turn you into an incredible 5-star chef, a bodybuilding book is not made to turn you into the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. And in that same spirit, books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill or Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, they are not made to turn you into a multi-millionaire directly. So what's the point of reading those books then? Is it just a waste of time in the end? And if that doesn't make you rich, then what does? We are going to answer this question in just a minute. But before that, I want to answer one more question that you probably have in mind. You see, most people think that in order to make millions of dollars, you must be smarter than the average Joe. And so naturally, one could ask themselves, well, how do I become smarter? Because surely if I become smarter, then I'm going to naturally increase my earning potential as well, right? But you see, this way of thinking is reasoning by analogy. And reasoning by analogy can often lead you in the wrong direction. And oftentimes, these hypotheses and theories, they sound very clever on paper, because in a way, well, they are clever. However, most of the time, they could not be further from the truth. Just like at some point in the fitness industry, people used to think that if you eat fat, you're gonna gain fat. I mean, at first sight, it would make sense. If you eat fat, you gain fat. But it turns out, no, it doesn't work that way. It's if you eat too much of literally anything that you're gonna get fat. And to illustrate my point, and to give you a clear example of how reasoning by analogy can be very dangerous, well, just take a look at this example. Rats are like humans, and DDT has been shown to cause cancer in rats. Therefore, this must mean that DDT will cause cancer in humans humans too. However, this way of thinking is very flawed. I mean, just because rats and humans, they show similarities, it doesn't mean that something in particular, like DDT, which is an insecticide used in agriculture, will impact us the same way that it impacts rats. Now, there is another way to think, to form thought patterns, which is a lot more efficient than reasoning by analogy, and that is to reason by first principles. What this means in plain and simple English is that you break things down into their components, their core components, and then you reason from there. And to give you a concrete example of what this might look like, any DIY tutorials use first principles reasoning, because what they do oftentimes in DIY tutorials is that they're going to look at something, like let's say a table, and they're going to ask themselves how they can make one themselves from scratch, instead of having to go to the store and to buy one, for instance. Or one very popular do-it-yourself at the moment is do-it-yourself air conditioning, because a lot of people simply cannot afford AC at home. So what they do is that they're going to take a look at an AC system and break it down to its core components. So they will be able to see which materials they're going to need to use and how to connect them and to piece them together so that in the end, they built their own air conditioning system for a relatively inexpensive price. So you see, that is the difference between reasoning by analogy and reasoning by first principles. Now again, you may be wondering, okay, that's very interesting, but what does any of this have to do with making money, and especially with reading books? Well, do you remember when we talked about the fact that in our society, most people either believe that you are born with a specific talent or you are not. Most people typically believe that you are either born smart or dumb, and that there isn't much that you can do to change that. And in that same spirit, most people believe that if they want to obtain a lot of money or a life of freedom, of abundance, of luxury, they need to reinvent the wheel or do something that has never been done before. When in reality, business doesn't have to be that complex. Even if you wanted to become a billionaire, you would not necessarily have to create the new social media app that is going to revolutionize the world and change the lives of billions of people. You could simply take an existing solution on the market, find ways to improve it, find its flaws and correct them, and make a fortune just like that. If you offer something that is better than what is currently available on the market, then you are going to make a gigantic amount of money for sure. So this is where reading books comes into the equation. How do we even define smarts and intelligence to begin with? Well, most of the time, to be completely honest with you, we think that somebody is smart, or on the opposite, we think that somebody isn't clever based on what they say. For instance, I'm sure that you've been part of a conversation where one person, they clearly had no clue what the rest of the group was talking about, and so everybody just thought them quote-unquote dumb. But imagine what would happen if that same person that everyone in the group thought was quote-unquote dumb decided to pick up the top 10 books on that subject and to read them. Well, next week, the group reunites as per usual, and now that same person who didn't know anything at all, they're teaching the rest of the group stuff that none of them even knew. And now, well, of course, that person seems really clever and really smart. And that's because they are actually smarter. Now, there isn't only one way to increase your smarts, because to begin with, there isn't just one single type of intelligence. There are many types of intelligence, such as emotional intelligence, mathematical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, and many others. And the truth is that oftentimes, somebody, for instance, is going to have a very high, a very developed mathematical intelligence. However, their emotional intelligence will not be as developed. That's the law of compensation. So you can be smart in one way, yet not that clever in another. So if books can make you smarter and more knowledgeable on specific topics, can they actually make you rich? You see, the truth is that while it's great to read books like Rich Dad Poor Dad or Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, these books really serve as an introduction to the world of finance and wealth building. So they're great to read when you are just getting started, because you still have such this big learning curve ahead of you. So pretty much any book that you pick up or any YouTube video that you watch on finance or wealth will teach you something valuable on the subject. However, as you grow more advanced, reading books will not directly lead to you making more money unless you're reading some kind of very specific book on maybe creating funnels. Because the truth is that you do not need to be a genius to reinvent the wheel to create the next TikTok or the next Facebook, or to have an insanely high IQ to get rich. Over the years, I have noticed a common trend, a common pattern among the most successful people in the world. Hard work plus vehicle plus timing equals success. This is what I call the success equation. First, hard work, because without hard work, nothing at all will ever happen. The sad truth is that you can daydream all you want about becoming rich, or you can spend your entire days scrolling on social media, looking at all of those influencers showcasing a luxurious lifestyle, but none of that will ever make you rich. A lot of people constantly ask me, oh, does this business model work? And oh, what about this one? And is it really possible to make 10K a month with the consulting business model? And the answer to all of those questions is yes, absolutely, it is possible. However, I like to say that it only works if you work. If you don't put in the work, then no business model is ever going to make you rich, and I can guarantee it. And then the second element of the success equation is the vehicle. If you spend 12 hours a day flipping burgers at McDonald's, no matter how hard you work at it, like it doesn't matter if you devote your soul to your job, you will never make $1 million a year just by doing that. So by vehicle, I mean what kind of work you are doing. The vehicle that you are using must allow you to make millions if you want to become rich. For instance, with a consulting or an e-commerce business, there are no limits to how much money you can generate in a given month or in a given year. And finally, the third component of the success equation is is timing. I know that some successful people like to pretend that they are bigger than life itself, or that they are above other people, and that nobody can replicate their success. However, the truth is that timing also plays a big part in somebody's rise to success. Really, let me ask you this question. What is the main difference between a winner and a loser? So take a guess and write your answers in the comments down below. But I'll tell you what I personally think. In my opinion, the main difference between winners and losers, and pretty much the only difference really, is that winners have such a high willingness to keep pushing past the point where everybody gives up. That's what makes them so successful. All successful people know and understand that failure is simply a part of the process. It's inevitable. And if you think about it, even though failure doesn't feel really pleasant when you are living it, failure is showing you what success is by showing you what success is not. So in life and in business, a lot of people just don't realize that it's often more about the things that you don't do as opposed to the things that you actually do. In a world where people love to add 30,000 different things to their to-do list just so they can feel more productive and trick themselves into thinking they're actually getting more stuff done than they really are, it's more about doing less and even about removing as many things as possible as opposed to adding more stuff to do. Because honestly, if you are looking for more work to do or more things to fill up your time with, believe me when I say that you will always have more stuff to do without any trouble. I mean, it's easy to find things to do in your business, but they don't really matter. So would you rather look busy or actually be productive and get stuff done? So if you actually want to be able to get rich, to be able to literally afford anything without having to take the price tag into consideration, maybe you want to travel the world or provide for your loved ones, the best way to go about it is to actually learn as you go. The truth is that the best place to learn is on the battlefield. And to give you an example, well, soldiers, they can train all day long and they can practice shooting targets at a shooting range, but it's only when they are going to fight real-life enemies on the actual battlefield that the real learning curves takes place. There are no such things as classroom veterans. So if you want to start your own online consulting business, I have created a free full step-by-step guide on YouTube that will teach you how you can do just that. I'll make it appear on your screen. With that said, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. It's always great to exchange with other people in the comments section because we can all learn from one another. And with that said, I will see you in the next one.